I basically do research on distance perception in VEs, virtual environments. So what I mean by that is I'm quite interested in how people build up an understanding of the environment they're in and the scale of the environment they're in. So in order to study this, I would write my own software, I would develop these environments in-house, and then I would run some lab-based human experiments. So I basically get people to come into the lab, brief them on a task they have to do, and then record how they perform inside the VE and then analyse that afterwards. My degree started off with a year's placement in the university. So I came in and did some courses on software engineering, computer vision, machine learning. Then the remaining 3 years, so it's a 4-year degree, and the remaining 3 years I then spent in a company. So I worked at a company in London on something a little bit different. So when I first started the degree, I came across spatial audio. At the time, I had no idea what that was. It is essentially a audio analogy to 3D computer graphics. So it's the ability to present sound in 3D that you can hear over headphones, and you get a sense of the direction and orientation of the sounds in space. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And I met up with a company in London who were applying this technology to develop games. And I always was keen on developing games as a teenager. So I really liked that idea. So I basically started in the company developing these audio games, and I then branched into VR. Because at the time, this would have been 2014, 2015, the Oculus Rift had kind of really kicked off into gear. So I said, okay, I wonder, can I apply some of this spatial audio technology to VR? And that's essentially what I did. So I then came across, read some more literature. So I had my engineering ideas solid. I needed to find some sort of research track. And I came across this really interesting problem in VR where people tend to underestimate the scale and distances of the environment they're in. So for example, this room here might be perceived as smaller, even though we were to take measurements and do a one-to-one rendering model inside the headset, it would just appear smaller. And I was really interested in why that happens. So that was kind of the foundation of my degree, and I ran some experiments where I manipulated the the acoustic space and then the visual space inside the headset for a number of participants, gave them, as I said before, set a task to do, and I discovered that if you do carefully manipulate the environment with respect to where you render sounds and their visual counterparts for an audiovisual object, you can actually correct to some extent this compression inside the headset. I had 2 academic supervisors and I had 1 company supervisor. So my line manager in the company I obviously saw day to day in the office. My academic supervisors I would see once a week. So I used to take trips down to Bath from London. So the academic meetings were more or less, okay, how is the research going on? What is it going in the right direction? What's the progress update? Any issues that are occurring? So you're stuck on an implementation or you don't understand a concept, stuff like that. Whereas the daily line manager was much more, okay, what software are we doing now? So I was embedded with a small media company, and we were actively developing, as I said, games for the iOS suite of devices. So that was more or less kind of how my time was split between the, so I would spend 3 days doing some game development in the company, and then 2 days doing research 1 week, and then next week maybe 4 days doing research and 1 day doing software dev. So I kind of worked out a system with the company because with the NGD it's really interesting because depending on the company's aspirations and what they want to achieve, one day you could be working on a range of different projects as well as your research, or some companies will give you, well, we want you to do this for 3 years, 4 years. From my personal perspective, it's the opportunity to work in this interesting environment where I'm doing research, but I'm also constantly aware of applications. So I'm still developing code. So I'm up to scratch with latest build systems, latest game engines, new frameworks and APIs to do things with. So yeah, everyone really benefits if they can come to some sort of agreement on, okay, what's the project scope, what's the researcher going to do, what's the company going to contribute, how is the time split between industry and university. And I think it's just a really, really good opportunity to work in that, for me, to work in that environment.